Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another Around the Town of Brantford with Henry and Frank. I'm Frank Toohill on the Brantford Green today. Today is Arbor Day in Brantford. It's Saturday, April 30th. Now, the 29th, yesterday, was really Arbor Day, and the Brantford Garden Club celebrated Arbor Day in Brantford down at Foot Park. But today, it's the following day, on Saturday, April 30th, here on the town green, the Brantford Conservation and Environment Commission had a very successful Earth Day celebration last Saturday. And as a follow-up to Earth Day, they're also doing Arbor Day. Arbor Day is a tree holiday. It's when people plant trees all across the world. It started in the United States. The first Arbor Day was in Nebraska, and that was in 1872, April the 10th. And they say that in Nebraska, there were 1 million trees planted that year for Arbor Day. And then it spread all over the world. In 1883, from Connecticut, Birdsey Northrop, his name, he globalized Arbor Day. He went to visit Japan, and he delivered the first Arbor Day speech, in the world outside of the United States. And then Gifford Pinchot, who was the head of the U.S. Forest Service, whose ancestors live right on the Brantford-Guilford town line down at Old Quarry, he talked to President Theodore Roosevelt, and he said, Arbor Day should be publicized and supported, and that's just what President Roosevelt did. He spoke to public school children, and he actually made an Arbor Day proclamation. So, we've had Arbor Day ever since April 15th, 1907. It was established. So we're here on the Brantford Green today, and we're just about to talk to some people involved. It's the Brantford Environment Commission, Conservation Commission, and we're going to speak to the current chairman, I believe is not here, but the incoming chairman we're going to speak to, her name is Heather Sweeney, and we're going to also speak to RTM Representative Adrian Bonenberger. So stay with us. Our coverage continues of Arbor Day in Brantford 2022. Okay, I'm speaking with Adrian Bonenberg, RTM representative, as well as being on the Brantford Conservation and Environment Commission. Good afternoon. Nice to see you, Adrian.
Good to see you too, Frank.
Now, there's really two stories here with Adrian. The first one I'd like to discuss first, and then we'll talk about what's going on here with the trees. But I think to an extent, it's just as important, maybe more important, that there was a trip Adrian took recently, right, to the Ukraine. So would you tell us, what was that all about? What happened, Adrian?
Sure. So I'm a big believer in local issues, but because I've lived here in the U.S. and I lived in Ukraine covering the war there for a couple of years, 2016, 2017, I also, part of my local community, weirdly enough, is Kyiv, because that's where my wife and her parents are from. So my wife's parents were in Kyiv when the war started, and to get them out, we had to go over there. So we went over to Ukraine and to get them out from Ukraine.
When did you go over? Because the war's only been going on for what, about 5 or 6 weeks? So you've been over there recently?
Yeah. So we went over about a week after the war started. I think 3 or 4 days, when it looked like the Russian tanks were moving on Kyiv.
Yeah, right. They had that convoy that was about, 40 miles long of tanks on the way to Kyiv? Yeah. So you went over there to get your wife's parents home or out of there? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's right. And there's nothing more local than family. Family's the most local thing to everybody. That's if your family isn't whole and together, then that's something that you have to take care of. And so for my wife, we went over there and were able to get her parents, and then came back here, and they're with us now.
That's wonderful. What a great experience that must have been. I mean, at the time you went over there, was there any problem with transportation or how about the Russians? Weren't they? I mean, weren't they trying to stop you or anything? Or
Yeah, it was not. I mean, I was in the army a long time ago. I did a couple combat deployments to Afghanistan, so I have a good feel for like what dangerous places are like and what where the angles that you can come in and it's not quite as dangerous. I have to say we weren't in any danger. We were worried we might become in danger, but we weren't in any area with like heavy fighting. The city that we were in, Lviv, got rocketed a couple times when we were there, but we weren't close. We were 10, 15 miles away from the places that were getting rocketed.
how'd you get in there? How'd you get out? I mean, what transportation did you have?
Well, we took a bus in.
From where? From which airport did you land?
Yeah, so we went into we landed in Warsaw and then took a small plane over to Krakow, and transportation was arranged for us by sort of a group of friends of my wife's. There's a very active Ukrainian diaspora in the U.S. Actually, Connecticut has a very strong population of Ukrainian diaspora.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I think that Senator Blumenthal and Murphy have been pretty. I guess progressive on this issue. Not everybody sees it that way, but they know a lot about this issue because there are Ukrainians here, Republicans, Democrats, very bipartisan issue.
Yeah.
That are very plugged into what's happening in Russia for reasons that are obvious to us now. But so we were able to get good transportation in, and then on the way out, after so my wife was doing a lot of humanitarian assistance help, I was training citizens to sort of resist and urban combat, that sort of thing. And so the people that we had helped with training were able to organize a couple of cars, and they brought us over the border back into Krakow on the way out.
So, I mean, the operation, I mean, was it quick? You drove in and they got in the car and then you drove out. Was it quick like that? Or?
So for us, we didn't go to Kyiv. We were able to find a driver that was coming from Kyiv to Lviv, but it took them a couple days to get to do the drive. There were a lot of checkpoints.
Oh, sure.
I think just about every Ukrainian town in the West now has their own checkpoint. They're checking passports, making sure no Russian saboteurs are going around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope and pray that nothing like that ever happens in our country. Just crazy to see a country with cars and just a modern civilization like our own, torn apart by war. It's horrible.
Terrible. I know that whole thing. I mean, we see it on the news every night, and all the destruction and death, and it's just. I mean, it's uncalled for. There's no advantage to doing it. It's just, it's aggression. It's, it's a terrible thing. Horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're seeing a lot of. We're seeing a lot of assumptions on the left and the right about Russia, about how the world functions tested. And I mean, I think people who look at Russia, I see, because I'm on the left, I see, a lot of anti-Americanism. So people who want to talk about, how this is NATO's fault or this is America's fault that the war is happening. And then on the far right, I see people who are, pro-Russian, who are like, oh, we need a king, we need a despot like Vladimir Putin.
Where, in the U.S.?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
People are saying that?
Yeah, and the right, I mean, there are problems on the right and there are problems on the left. And but for anybody who's paying attention, I think you look at this and you say, Putin spent all this money on this military that's garbage for the most part.
Yeah.
And he could have just invested that in his country. I mean, Russia's so wealthy with natural resources.
Yeah.
Instead of bothering other people, invading their country, why not just, put your money into...
It's mad. It's mad. And also, right, currently about 20,000 of his own countrymen, right, have been killed in the war.
That's right.
20,000. It's just, the whole thing is mind-boggling. It's totally, horrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, so it's been great to talk to you about that. It must have been a terrific experience, but the main thing is, right, you got your in-laws home. So how do they feel? They must be, so happy to be in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I think they, it's tough for them. They're here on a tourist visa. They were going to visit us anyway in June in the summertime. So they try to come over once every other year. We'll go visit them. They'll come visit us. But I think it's hard for them because they got a return ticket for July. If the war isn't over, then are they going to go home? Or probably I'm going to go to Iris in Connecticut and get them registered as refugees. So I think for them, they're trying to enjoy it here, but it's tough for them seeing
there's
their
a lot on
country
their mind, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Right, the future, and I mean, I'm sure they have people there that they were very close to, their friends. And how about the house that they lived in? Is it still standing, or was it demolished?
Yeah, we're really lucky. We've their apartment is in the northern part of Kyiv, and that was the part that was kind of under the most threat. But we ended up being lucky. Like, even though there was fighting in that area, their place didn't get hit. So knock on wood.
Okay, so I mean, I just want to ask. This is my last question, and then we'll talk about Arbor Day. Arbor Day. But I mean, I thought that part of the idea of the Russians was to take the capital, Kyiv, and I couldn't believe it when they just walked away after they have killed so many and done so much destruction. I mean, it just does it doesn't seem to add up, right?
So the story with Russia, and it's so hard for people to get their heads around this, and I wouldn't myself be able to understand it very well either had I not, like I said, lived in Ukraine and reported on it. And the interesting thing that happened in 2014 for Ukraine is they had a military of, on paper, depending on who you ask, 40,000, 60,000, or 125,000. I've seen different numbers quoted. In fact, in reality, they had an army of about 7,000, 3 brigades. They had 800 tanks on paper. And in reality, 12 of those were operational. Those are the tanks that they used in parades. I got this from the general who was in charge of armor for Ukraine in 2016. So 12 tanks, 7,000 troops, not a real army. So that was they got invaded, and they learned that actually this is what they had. Now, if you'd been sort of like video game style, or board games, okay, Ukraine, how much do they have? Well, they've got 800 tanks. They've got 100,000 soldiers. In 2014, that's what it said, but they didn't really have it because it was a pretty corrupt system.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Russia,
it's the same thing.
A very corrupt system.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
They got a much bigger military, but nobody really knows how much of it is real.
Right.
They got 1,500 planes. They've got 500 fifth generation fighters, very sophisticated planes. How many of those fly? How many pilots are trained to fly on those? How many generals were saying, yeah. We trained our guys. Yeah, the planes all fly. But actually, they weren't doing maintenance. They were putting a lot of that money in their pocket. So I think what we're learning is Russia invaded with the military that they have. There's no more Russian military that they can throw into this thing.
I see.
So they came in with 190 or 200,000 guys. That's it. That's what they got. There's no strategic reserves that Russia's holding on to. They got a lot of police, but police aren't the military. What's astonishing to us is as astonishing to the Russians because they've got 15,000 tanks on paper. How many of them actually, when you turn the key in the ignition, actually start? 1,500? 2,000? Nobody knows. But they're finding out. I mean, and at least with the Ukrainians, the Ukrainians had to find out their military didn't exist in 2014. They built a real military now. Well, Russians are finding out when they invaded that most of their military is a bunch of thugs, with machine guns. And the Ukrainians are doing real damage to them.
No, I know they've, they've done an outstanding job. Also they have a very courageous president. He's impressed everybody with his, speaking ability, and he really speaks up for the Ukrainians, and he says, right? He says we're not going to surrender.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's great to be here on the green with all the churches, right? We can say some prayers for the country and all the people in the Ukraine. It's a terrible situation, but great to speak with you. That's a great story. You got out of there with your in-laws. You just went in and you went out. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, great to speak to you, Adrian.
You as well, Frank.
Okay, all right. So now, okay, so you're also on the Brantford Conservation and Environment Commission. So that's the sponsor of Arbor Day here behind us. So Would you please explain what's going on with the trees? And I mean, what can people do today?
Yeah, this is Heather Sweeney's brainchild, and I think she is in the process of putting more dirt for these dogwoods. People have loved dogwoods, but
Those are dogwoods behind us?
yeah.
We're out of dogwoods. We're waiting for the dogwoods to arrive in a few minutes. We have white oak, sassafras, and sycamore.
Oh, totally out of dogwoods now.
Heather's coming back with more. That's what we're
Great,
waiting
that's
for.
great. Wow,
Yes.
that's wonderful. So, I mean, these are just,
These are bare root
Twigs.
trees. If they're going to be planted in 1 to 3 days, then this would be better. If they're going to wait maybe a week to plant them, then they probably want a potted plant.
what else do you have here that you're giving out?
Just those 4.
Okay.
The white dogwood, white
Would you
oak,
show us the trees?
sassafras.
The ones that are here, would you show us which is
Okay.
which is which?
Got a sycamore,
This is a sycamore,
Yeah.
white oak,
white oak,
Okay.
sassafras.
and sassafras.
Okay.
Good,
Okay.
Adrian.
Well, I had the popsicle
Yes.
sticks to help out.
So you mean these trees, right? For Arbor Day,
Yes.
you can come down if you're in Brantford. You come to the green today, and you can ask for a
Yes.
tree. And they're free.
They're free. Yes. We're giving away a lot of them. We gave them away last week for Earth Day on the green.
Yep.
And we had so many that we're giving them away again today.
Okay. So if a person picks up one of these trees, how do they get it to grow? I mean, what's
You have
What's
to
the
talk
best
to
way?
Ivy. She's the expert on planting them.
planting?
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
All right.
Ivy?
Okay, we're here on the Brantford Green. This is the Brantford Conservation and Environment Commission as they put on for Brantford citizens Arbor Day here, 2022. And we're just trying to speak to their expert about planting and growing these trees after you pick them up. So they, now, curious to know, how come you have these particular species to give away, Adrian?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us, the one of the most important things to us is helping rebuild Brantford's native biome. Plants and trees that are attuned to the insects that are native to Brantford, and the insects provide food for the birds, and the birds provide
Pollinators too, right?
pollinators as well.
Very
Yeah.
important, right? Yeah.
And so you've got a lot of plants that provide no value to insects, things like burning bush, things like paradise trees. I don't remember their exact name. And what I do know is that autumn olive, they choke out the native trees, basically kill them, and then they create food deserts for insects and birds. It's no good. You'll just look at it and it's like, oh, it just looks like a tree, but it's the wrong type of tree.
I see.
So what we're doing is, actually, Ivy over here
Ivy is-
can talk about the
She's
details
doing
of
how
how to
the
plant
trees.
them, which is the most important part.
It's true. I mean, if you bring your tree home from the Brantford Green, you want it to grow. So, okay, so would you give us some planting tips, Ivy?
So roots go down and the rest of it goes above the ground. There's actually a mark. If you look very closely at the bark on a bare root tree, if it's in a pot, you plant it at the same level it was in the pot.
Would you show us?
On a tree that has been that's bare root like this, it was in the ground, and you can kind of see there's a line where the bark changes texture or color.
Yes.
That's where the soil should go.
Oh,
So
up to
that
there, yeah.
up to there, but not above there. If you plant it too high, it'll start to rot,
Oh,
potentially. Although they are really forgiving, is the truth. And then an inch of water a week. Don't pile mulch around them, up a high against the bark because it lets rot in. Inch of water a week and keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah.
what kind of tree is that you're looking at?
This one right here is a white oak.
Okay.
And they're really valuable. I'm sure they've already told you. For local insect species, they support a huge diversity, which of course is the base of the food pyramid for birds
Yes, yeah.
locally. If
Yeah.
we don't have the insects, there's nothing for the birds to eat.
No, it's
So-
true. I know, right? Right. It's all part of right. It's the ecological chain. and,
web of
and
life,
I know it's
yes.
amazing. Everything's right interrelated. All these relationships with the birds and insects, and it's amazing.
It's very amazing.
Yeah.
And, white oaks are super valuable because they support so many what are called obligate insects ones that don't eat anything but white oak. But a diversity of trees is really important. If something
Yeah,
comes through
true, yeah.
that eats all the white oaks,
like-
if we get a blight or
like
something,
the beetles or something. Yeah.
like with the Dutch elm disease,
Yeah.
if you have nothing else planted, you're in big trouble.
The hemlock problem,
The hemlock with the woolly
with the
adelgid
beetles, I know all that stuff.
breaks my heart.
It's true. It's true. I agree with you. Okay, well, that's been great to talk to you and to see this. This is a great event. If people are interested in this whole area, I mean, how can they contact the Brantford Conservation and Environment Commission? You have the monthly meetings, right?
Yes, the commission's website is on the town's website
Okay.
under the commissions.
Okay, so they got the schedule there?
Conservation and Environment Commission.
Yeah. Okay.
We also have a Facebook page.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, there's a Facebook page, Brantford Conservation Environmental Commission. There are lots of things you can do. I think we got a really great commission. It's very bipartisan. Politics doesn't get into it. It's just people who want to help out in Brantford and help make the town more ecologically viable and more beautiful.
Great goals, Adrian, great goals. Now, after this, I wanted to know if you have any other upcoming projects. What's the next thing that you're going to be doing?
We're doing a lot of education at the festival on the green.
That's in
Father
June.
Days.
Yeah. That's coming up before you know it. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. That'll be great. Okay. So so we can look for them there, right? At the Brantford Festival, the upcoming Brantford Festival here on the Brantford Green. Right. It'll be the first time in two years, I guess, that it's coming back. So you can see them here at the Brantford Fest.
And we also have an ongoing project, the Pollinator Project.
Pollinator pathway. That's right.
Yes.
Yep.
And,
How does that work?
well, let's see. 2 years ago, we gave away a lot of pollinator plants, and that was very successful also. Hopefully, we would like to do that again this year.
What type of plants? I mean, what species?
Butterfly weed. What else were there?
Yeah, it was. I don't remember the exact plants, but one of them was swamp
Milkweed.
swamp milkweed, which
Yes.
is really good for monarch butterflies specifically.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, to give you some sense of the complexity here, there have been people who have raised monarch butterflies indoors, and there have been people who have raised monarch butterflies on a type of milkweed that grows in the south of the United States. And these butterflies haven't done very well, or in some cases have just died. Some people believe because the orientation of these butterflies, which is, the way they orient themselves to the United States is through stars and through the type of plant that they're on. So if a butterfly gets raised on a plant they're used to seeing in what to us is Louisiana, to them is sort of like, I got to go south right now, or I got to go north right now, depending on the temperature. And they get disoriented and they just don't go to the right place.
Oh, I see.
But if they're raised with milkweed that is local to Connecticut, what we think of as Connecticut, the butterfly thinks of as like, oh, this is where I got to be now, so I got to go north or I got to go south. These things are really, insects are very attuned to their environment, both in terms of what they eat, but also in terms of how they orient themselves, especially if, in the case of like the monarch butterfly, they're doing thousands of miles of migration as part of their breeding and everything else. So
It's amazing.
it really is very detailed. And
It's such a tiny, animal, a tiny insect, and yet, they all go down to, and they all get together. They all It's the Yucatan that they all go to for the winter.
That's right.
Right, it's amazing.
That's right. Far north to the far south.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so the idea with the pollinator pathways is to create, because so much of the natural environment has been interrupted by development or roadways, that like patches of plants that insects like is, we're hoping to build some of that back in. We're not opposed to development.
No.
We're just opposed to, I guess you could say, overdevelopment to the point where,
absolutely.
Animals and insects can't thrive anymore.
No, you don't want that. Yeah, you're right. Okay, well, that's great. Well, thanks for all the information, all right? Oh, here's Heather Sweeney. Heather Sweeney. Oh, Okay, so you're the incoming chairman, right?
I
of
am.
the
Thank you.
Conservation and
Conservation
Environment
Environment
Commission.
Commission.
So this is a great event that you're
Thank
having
you.
here, right?
Thank you. It actually turned out to be a great situation. We didn't get the word out enough before, but this is helping people feel motivated to come help out and get a tree. I don't mean to be redundant with what was said before. I was busy getting more trees.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot in the last 17 days about trees. I never would have believed it before, but I am now a firm believer that bare root tree seedlings plant better than those that are in containers.
Oh, I see. And that's what you have today.
That's what's in the bucket. We
Yeah,
did
the
pot
bare
some
root.
up
The
for
bare root,
people
yeah.
who
Yeah.
cannot get to it until 2 or 3 weeks. The pot will be better for that. But if you get it in the ground today or tomorrow, the bare root actually has a higher success rate.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's good. Yeah, that all makes sense. Yeah. Well, that's great.
Any other questions for me? Sorry, I
No, I mean
wasn't
we've been
available yet.
talking to
To
talking
Adrian
and
and-
to other people
Excellent.
about the about the commission, and it's been great. It's been real educational. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you for being here.
All right, it's great to be with you.
Happy spring, happy planting.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
All right, so that's what's going on today here on the Brantford Green as Brantford celebrates Arbor Day 2022. Brantford Conservation and Environment Commission here is working hard with the free trees, and they're trying to get some of the plants, the trees that are actually part of Brantford, back in Brantford, and it's good for for all of us. So anyway, for Henry Pond, I'm Frank Toohill. Until next time, for Around the Town of Brantford with Henry and Frank, goodbye.